Welcome to the Explainer. So, have you ever received a text that just said, fine, with a period at the very end, and you instantly broke into a cold sweat? We've all been there, right? Today, we're diving deep into how we truly communicate, way beyond just the literal words we say out loud. We're going to look under the hood of human interaction to analyze content, intent, and those super powerful nonverbal cues that can literally turn a simple little message into a massive argument. To get us to a place of complete clarity, here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll hit the anatomy of communication, decode content and intent, look at the power of nonverbals, navigate digital etiquette, and wrap up with strategies for better exchanges. Starting right off with Section 1, Anatomy of Communication, breaking down the invisible transmission of ideas. Okay, so the absolute most overlooked element of any exchange, it's context. It's the underlying environment, the cultural setting, or the situation where the communication is actually taking place. Honestly, think of it like the invisible water we're all swimming in. Whether you're pitching to a colleague in a super formal boardroom or just chatting with a friend at an incredibly loud concert, the context dictates the rules of engagement. It completely shapes the meaning of absolutely everything that follows. Without acknowledging context, well, we're basically trying to read a map without even knowing what country we're in. Every single idea goes on a surprisingly fragile journey. It starts with a source. That's you. Encoding an idea into a message. That message then has to travel through a channel. Now, that could be an email, your voice, or even just a subtle gesture. And finally, it lands with a receiver. But here is the catch. This path is incredibly delicate. At literally any point between the source and the receiver, your message can be distorted, misunderstood, or just entirely hijacked. Understanding this fragility is really the first step in diagnosing exactly where your daily communications are breaking down. Moving on to Section 2, Decoding Content and Intent, or what we say versus what we mean. On one side of the coin, we have content. These are the literal words, the strict dictionary definitions of the information you're sharing. But on the other side, we have intent. That's the underlying attitude, perspective, or the true purpose behind those words. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Picture this. Someone looks at you, lets out a massive sigh, and just says, "I'm fine." Okay, the content is simply, "I am doing well." The intent, however, it usually means the exact opposite. Separating the literal words from that deeper intent is an absolutely critical skill if you want to avoid some serious friction. So how do we actually decode that intent? Well, it really comes down to the twin engines driving your underlying message: tone and purpose. Tone is the emotional flavor of the message, and purpose is the why behind it. Analyzing tone and purpose is exactly how we recognize the underlying assumptions in all sorts of diverse interactions. If you aren't actively listening for tone and searching for that core purpose, you know what? You're only ever decoding half the message. That brings us to Section 3, the power of nonverbals, and how silence speaks volumes. Listen, you could have the most beautifully crafted content in the world, but if your posture is completely closed off and you're refusing to make eye contact, the receiver's interpretation changes entirely. A really timely gesture can perfectly clarify a complex point, while crossed arms instantly set a defensive tone. These silent signals are the ultimate validators, or honestly, betrayers of our literal words. They do the heaviest lifting in our exchanges, often contradicting exactly what we just said out loud. And when we scale this whole thing up to a formal speech or a presentation, the stakes for those nonverbals completely skyrocket. In these high-pressure settings, facial expressions and tone of voice become your primary instruments. A subtle pause, a slight shift in your volume, or just a genuine, authentic smile. Those are the things that deliver the true weight and emotion of the message to a large audience. They are what transform a really dry presentation into a captivating experience.
Next up is Section 4, Navigating Digital Etiquette, Interpreting Messages Through a Screen.
Think about it. In person, you have all the data, right? You have immediate tone of voice, visible posture, direct eye contact. But in an email or a text message, those physical cues are entirely stripped away. Because we can't hear tone or see facial expressions, we are forced to rely heavily on digital etiquette, which brings an incredibly high risk of missing the underlying attitude of the sender. This is exactly why we so often project our own mood onto a text message. If you're stressed out, you'll probably read a totally harmless email as passive-aggressive, simply because that original nonverbal context is missing.
Finally, Section 5, Strategies for Better Exchanges, Reconstructing the Communicative Process.
Okay, so the source material highlights 3 dynamic tools to actually fix these breakdowns. First up is equitable turn-taking. Consciously managing the back and forth prevents that conversational dominance that just completely kills connection. Second is active listening. Now, this isn't just sitting there waiting for your turn to speak. It's deploying your own nonverbals to decode both content and intent in real time. And finally, polite interruption. This is about safely course-correcting a conversation to keep the channel productive. These active strategies directly solve the exact misinterpretations we mapped out earlier. So it's time to take a second and look in the mirror. I want you to review your own daily participation. Think about your workplace emails, your texts, your dinner conversations. Where do you excel? Perhaps you're an elite active listener. But where do you lose the thread? Maybe your digital etiquette needs a little work, or maybe your facial expressions give away your frustration way before you even open your mouth. Identifying your own blind spots is the absolute ultimate key to mastering the anatomy of a message. So, based on everything we've unpacked in this explainer today, from the super fragile channels of our messages to the gap between content and intent, to the sheer power of our silent cues, what is one specific area of your daily communication that you are going to change today? Seriously, pick just one thing, focus on it, and watch your exchanges completely transform. Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer, and we will catch you next time.